Hey folks, welcome back. It's Sunday and another stream time. Sorry I'm a little late. I got caught up doing some stuff, real life. But I am back today. Probably going to be a bit of a short stream because I want to talk about my latest acquisition. This book, Dragons, by Mayfair Games in their Role Aids series of books. Really great book. And actually, after thumbing through it, uh, it's even better than I thought I remembered it being. This is one that while I didn't own, I had regular access to it. My longtime roommate and best friend from high school had a copy of it. Um, and it is full of good stuff. See, so good morning, Grumpy Old Slan. Good morning, Mage's Musings. Good morning, GM Cody. There's 4 people supposedly watching at this time. Um, so, I guess to recap, also real quick, how's my audio coming in? I noticed when I watched the uh, playback from the last stream, the audio was a little weird. So if anybody can give me a heads up as to if I'm coming through loud and clear. I know my mic sucks, but am I at least coming through loud and clear? Thank you, Grumpy Old Slam. All right, cool. So, I think everybody who's on right now knows what the Role Aids supplements are from Mayfair Games. It came out in the mid '80s, and they were ostensibly AD&D in and out. All right, let me take a look at something here real quick. That was the problem before. I'm going to turn off the automatically adjust mic volume. How is it now? Is it good? Okay. Am I coming through all right? Is it no longer going in and out? Um. Anyways, yeah. So Mayfair Games had. I don't know if they were officially licensed. I don't think that they were. Um. I don't think that they were because they did not use exact AD&D stats. I think we talked about this last time, where instead of hit points, for example, they would say hits to kill. Um, but everything else was very much AD&D with the serial numbers filed off. Um, so in the mid '80s, they did a series of these books, starting as early as I think like '83, and I think the Dragons and the Giants supplements are some of their later ones. Um, they This trade dress here, where they actually specifically say um, for use with AD&D, came later. Um, and so um, I think later on they hey bear they were either given a blessing, had a license, but decided to keep their mechanics consistent from what they had already established. Um, but also these later books, Dragons and Giants, for example, do also seem to show a an attempt to tie in with other lines. Dragons and Giants, I think, are two. Or the reason they call in um, higher prices is that they probably tap into both role players and miniatures collectors, because both of the 2 books were tie-ins to Grenadiers, Dragons, and Giants Reigns and Miniatures for their Dragon Lords range. And so, if you're a have to have everything kind of collector for Grenadier, you're probably picking these up as well. So yeah, I'll get into that in a minute. So in other news, let's see, I've been doing some miniature stuff. I did my first foray into ordering 3D printed miniatures. Got some robotses, like, kind of Chappie-esque modern style robots, cyberpunk type robots. Got 2 kinds for, I want to use them for future police type miniatures. Haven't done much else gaming wise. We we had serious weather, which kept me from getting to the Wednesday game that I got into my brother's D&D campaign again, and then I was not really feeling up to it this last week, so also did not go to that. I do have my Sunday game tonight, so that'll be fun. Get some big breakthroughs in that campaign. But yeah, other than that, been kind of gearing up to try to get to doing some more terrain building and stuff for miniatures gaming. Terrain building has always been a favorite for me, and I haven't done it for a while because I yeah, just motivationally and then also organizationally, I've been kind of having some troubles there, but I'm improving that. Uh, in the trials and tribulations of gaming, I went to go ahead and order a new supply of bases and accidentally ordered 120 of the wrong size base. Um, at first, I thought they sent me the wrong ones, and then I checked the receipt. I did not know that 28.5 millimeter round bases was even a thing. But I did some reading, and evidently 28.5 is the actual size for what Games Workshop was calling 30 millimeter for a while. So that was annoying because I was looking for 25 millimeter rounds. And on the listing for these, they list them as 28.5, and then there's some notation of 25 millimeter in the thing, which is annoying. So I ended up having to order a whole bunch more of those. And I don't particularly have a use for these, but having slightly bigger miniature bases, I guess, is never a bad thing. Some miniatures just don't want to fit on smaller bases, but I've been using 32 millimeter bases for my larger models, like I did on these werewolves. Gives a lot of real estate on the base, and I do like to do basing on miniatures. You can see, like, for example, on this dude, I have a nice rocky outcropping created for his menacing werewolfness. And so yeah. So yeah, that was my trial and tribulation. I've actually been going back and rereading, studying, evaluating, whatever you want to call it, the basics of miniatures painting because I was really having a problem. Oh, and in other horrible news, my freaking external hard drive containing most of my gaming library stopped working. Fortunately, the stuff I'm playing regularly is on my main computer, but this is, I don't know if it's recoverable. It's solid state drives, and so maybe, but I can't get it to power up. So, yay. But yeah, so I've not been able to find a copy of Giants that is in the price point that I'm willing to pay, but Dragons, this one here, really nice condition copy, as you can see by the cover. That looks like wrinkles on the cover, but it's actually arrows in the dragon's wing. You can see its spine, pretty crisp. Not a, there's no staining on the page ends. It's a really nice copy, and I got it from a seller that does free shipping, so even better. So this book is advertised as an adventure for 6 to 8 characters, skill levels 6 to 9. They always list these as adventures because they always do. They always have some sort of adventure in them. So this one has 3 complete adventures, detailed reference manual, as well as a new character class, the Dragon Lord. So you can actually, I'm sure I knew it back in the day, but I totally forgot how all-encompassing of a dragon supplement this was for AD&D. This predates the Draconomicon and all of that as well. So if you were really looking for a book back in the day, to enhance your dragons, this would have been it, and I'm sure we used the fuck out of this. But yeah, it's a really nice book put together. as it's put together, I mean, one thing I really liked about um, the Role Aid stuff is because they were sort of D&D adjacent in their statistics and stuff. They always had a how to use this book section at the beginning, which would give you a breakdown of what their notations are, um, and even has like a list of abbreviations at the bottom that tell you how to read their stuff. That Goose Wizard is very high level. He also has some ranks in Rogue or Thief, probably because he managed to sneak here and appear in my basement after having been left behind in Washington State. So um, it was uh, it was pretty sneaky. So uh, it's probably one of the greatest pranks. Um, hey, Gen Exile, not your Echo, and Richard the Dungeon Crawler. So that goose is the goose that keeps on giving. It's the wizard goose. We all call it the wizard goose. Um, my buddy back in Seattle, and I had this long-standing. We have two long-standing gags. One is cobras, based on the Simpsons bit where Homer gets attacked by cobras or has nightmares about cobras, and then the other one is about geese. And so it started with just a random goose in my driver's seat of my car when I went out to go to work one morning. Um, and then that became a garden ornament. But then this guy was in my game room when I went out one day to go to, because my office slash game room was a outbuilding behind the house. Went out there, and he's there in all of his splendor on my game table. So the Wizard Goose was around. Actually, it was around before this channel. In fact, when I was thinking about coming back and restarting this channel, I almost had the Wizard Goose be the face on the camera. But because he's not a puppet or anything, it would have been kind of boring. Anyways, when we moved from Seattle to St. Louis, we had to triage a lot of stuff, and I had to make some hard decisions, like all my crap I had collected for all my junk and stuff I'd collected for building terrain and stuff, for all the junk building and big huge chunks of styrofoam and all of that all had to stay behind. Um, and also I had to make a choice with like a bunch of models also stayed behind because I didn't want to try and transport them. And the Wizard Goose. I had given the Wizard Goose back to my buddy because I'm sure he would appreciate it. Not to mention he could keep it as a memento of me around his house, his game room. But evidently, when my brother went back to Seattle to visit family back there, the Wizard Goose, my buddy had the Wizard Goose ride home with him, and then my wife got it from my brother, who then snuck it down. My wife snuck it down and put it into my office chair downstairs. So here I come downstairs, and this was months and months after we moved here. So we were all settled in. We'd unpacked everything. I had not seen this guy in my stuff at all. And so, well, the Wizard Goose shows up, and I was totally thrown because I didn't know how it got there. You know, like, I was pretty damn sure that if we had packed it, she had snuck it in, I would have seen it. So I'm like all weirded out and slightly excited because I'm thinking, hey, my buddy must have come in, and so I'm like running upstairs, and I wake up, go through making coffee, get ready for work, walk downstairs, and totally miss the fact that his car was in our driveway and he was asleep in our guest room. Very possible. But no, turns out him, my brother, and my wife all conspired to prank me with this thing a second time and have it just appear in the basement. So God love them all. That's why they're amazing. But anyways, that's the origin of the Wizard Goose. Wizard Goose sounds like some sort of cantrip. Cheeky Prentice would admit. Wizard Goose would actually be a really good name for a YouTube channel, a D&D YouTube channel. And if I had animation skills, I could see making like one of those like kind of very clippy computer animation things. But yeah, so anyhow, so back to dragons. So this book, like I said, it has that intro in the beginning. Um, it then has an overview of dragons. Talks about how they live in clans, they're proud and arrogant, strange and marvelous powers. Dragons are part god. Now, the cool thing about this is, um, like all role aids things, they do not feel beholden to the things that have been written in D&D separate from their books. They very much take a creative stance that their depiction of dragons is their own thing, or elves, or humanoid races, dwarves and stuff. So it's very cool, and I've mentioned this line of books many times in various panels and stuff I've been on, because this line of books is very much why my D&D is so much different than a lot of other people's D&Ds, because I had a lot of access to third party stuff because we had a couple of good shops up in my area in Seattle, so I was able to get a hold of lots of issues, lots of one-off issues of Dragon, lots of third-party supplements that a lot of people might not have had a lot of access to. I also realized in doing comparisons to my childhood to other people that I actually had an amazing amount of spending money for somebody my age back in the day. So my parents, despite being poor, made sure that I didn't feel it or even know it half the time. So good job, parents, I guess. But the presence of books like this in my gaming career, and the fact that they did take their own stance on things and they had their own creative voice, informed my style of gaming to where it made it much more open to new ideas. And even though I'm very much a homebrew GM in a lot of ways, I was able to import a lot of stuff from these supplements into my campaign. So the next thing they go into, they give brief summaries of the individual types of dragons, each of them illustrated by a sepia-toned version of the box art for each of the Grenadier dragon boxes. And so we have all of the standard, dragon types from D&D. We have, silver, gold, green, copper, black, brassine rather than brass, or bronze. So they actually have it. They did have I remember that line of miniatures did have some unique dragons to it that did not exist in D&D. So they have the brassine dragon that has fire breath. We have blue dragons, white dragons. We then have bronze dragons, platinum dragons, red dragons, and then spectral dragons, which was what they called Tiamat. They just made spectral dragons their own class of dragon rather than like a one-off. And so dragons each are listed as having a clan, average height, weight, wingspan, length, their breath type, their alignment. It's interesting though because their alignments in here do not necessarily line up with alignments in D&D. For example, a lot more of these are lawful. That's one thing I noticed. Even the evil ones, which makes sense if they live in an organized clan society or anything like that. So they did change some of that. And then let's see, like for example, black dragons in here are lawful good. Yeah, that's not normal. So their dragons are much more of a stratified society with very few of them appearing to actually be evil. Wow, I can't get this page to turn. Like the green dragons are just true neutral. So and like the blue dragon is lawful evil. The bronze dragon is lawful good. When we get to the platinum dragon, I found that one was interesting because it had These pages do not want to turn. They're not stuck together or anything. They're just very light paper. The Platinum Dragon is lawful good and lawful evil. So, and then the only chaotic evil dragon in the whole book is the Red Dragon, and the Spectral Dragon is actually true neutral, which makes sense because, you know. So then we get a section on statistics, which we get the basic stats for the dragons, and then a strength chart. I don't know, mages, perhaps. And then it goes, they have an ego chart. They give them an ego chart similar. And instead of the age categories, they called them molts. And then that equates that hatchling, youth, young adult, mature, ancient. And then they have a saving throw chart. They do give a big bunch of stat blocks, you know, quick reference stat blocks. So that's good. Let's see. This is actually, and this is one part of this book that I totally forgot, which is really kind of cool. Dragons as player characters. They actually give you mechanics for dragons as player characters, and a series of abilities that they can gain as they go up in level. And that starts this whole next section of the book. You know, here's all the stuff before your first molt. These are options that you can get before the second molt, before the third molt, and then on after the fourth molt. And then they have a section on dragon biology. This is where it gets into kind of Dragonomicon territory. A bunch of really nice illustrations showing the biology of the dragons. Talks about their thick skin. It gives a random, because of that, it gives a random location hit chart. Talks about, you know, how they have hollow bones and dragon wings and how pseudo lungs work, evolution, reproduction, and then it goes into a series on mutations. It's interesting because in here, like a lot of early D&D products, they mix a little bit of science in with their fantasy. Remember how, like, reading the description of Fireball is a early intro lecture on thermodynamics. So the mutations occur because the dragons spend so much time in high elevations where the atmosphere does not shield them as much from the ultraviolet radiation. But their anatomy, but their biology is such that they have a template in their DNA that is designed to translate genetic damage due to excessive radiation into mutation, which then you have a little bit on the four gifts of the gods, which talked about blessed by the elemental deities. But the mutations list is pretty substantial. It's, you know, and it's got descriptions throughout them. Has a little bit here on head shaping, which is something evidently dragons do for style. It has a section on diseases and parasites that dragons have. Like, so, you know, really cool stuff on, you know, the type of stuff that they have to deal with. They have elbow boils and blood rot and gnats, flies, and scale rippers, stomach worms, red eye, shell plague. And then it goes into their culture. Talks about how, you know, their pastimes, living in a lair, excavating. Get a side cutaway diagram of a dragon lair. And you'll notice there are bugs in there. And that is because in this, the dragons have a symbiotic relationship with giant termites that actually do the digging for their lairs. And dragons kind of move in, and the termites help defend. Sort of becoming sort of the minions of the dragons, but also the dragons provide defense to them. No, they actually, Grumpy Old's Land, they don't have those, but they have some other things, and I'm sure the termites maybe help. And it talks about the hunt, raising the young, wealth, protecting treasure. There's a section of dragon dreams, which is interesting. It says, sleep in more, to a dragon, sleep is more than important rest time. Dragons dream while they sleep. It is during these dreams that a dragon transcends the mortal realities of this world and touches the divine presence that is within himself. All dragons can dream, so some dreams can cause physical phenomenon as they dream. So this is really cool stuff. I think that would tie in possibly to even good adventure hooks. When a dragon's dreams begin to manifest in the area. Like they have meteor, like you roll 13 meteor. The dragon dreams of a meteor crashing to the earth. The dragon will dream that a meteor will crash within 1d4 miles of his sleeping form. The meteor can be from 1d100 pounds. The dragon will not be able to determine the exact spot the meteor will crash. It will be totally random, except that it will never strike the dragon's sleeping form. So, if your local dragon dreams of a meteor, something's getting hit. And then they talk about the dragon clans and feuds. There are 12 dragon remembrances, which seem to be like mottos or prayers or whatever, or little slogans like one: a dragon may not steal from fellow clan members. Dragons give the best portion to their children. No true dragon shall breed with another dragon's mate. Dragon children shall learn the clan law. Beware of tigers in the night. Beware of men, because they shall steal your hearts. Beware of elves, because they shall steal your land. Beware of dwarves, because they shall steal your gold and gems. Beware of those who steal your birthright. Dragon must never fight dragon. Honor the elders, for they seek truth. Honor the priests, for they know the path to righteousness. So dragons have some spirituality in this. Yep. Yeah, Smaug probably could have used some terminates. But there are like feuds, and they talk about the different types of feuds that dragons have. Time and dragons, how they deal with it. Learning spells. Interestingly enough, dragons have spell points instead of ancient magic. And so they have ordinary magic, and then they have some elemental magic. And then there's a section on guards and pets. It has some illustrations for some of them. Some of it is like medieval manuscript looking stuff. Like there's a thing called an asteroid serpent, which guardians, because they serve as dual purpose, they have no mouth and normally use their disintegration ray to vaporize rocks. Then breathe in the dust and gas for sustenance. So interesting. Then they have this thing called sensor dogs, which are little dogs with antennas. I'm not so sure, Daryl. There might be actually Dragon Rider versus Dragon Rider, because there's an entire. We'll get to that in a moment here. There's also the Draglos. So the sensor dogs, real quick, are telepathic dogs who have infravision and can sense the presence of other beings. There are the Draglos, which are giant mutant flies that eat small animals and birds and use their glue webs to catch them. So essentially everybody's nightmare, flying spiders. We then have Kolans, special plants that release a gas when touched. The gas will melt through any type of substance. That is specific to the Kolans. So there are metal Kolans, leather Kolans, flesh Kolans, cloth Kolans. So it's kind of cool. And each of them comes in a different color. There are pellet fish, giant species of carp. Each fish has a gland that secretes hard oval-shaped pellet. Fish can shoot from its mouth. So these are all things that you would populate the dragon layers with to harass your players, in addition to the termite workers. The macro terms, as they call them. There's also the Terralaxuses, which are smart. What's the description of the Terralaxus? Intelligent cats mutated and bred by dragons. There you go. They're 5 feet long. And then it talks about there are others, and it gives a list of common D&D. This is where it ties back into AD&D, because it gives a list where, other things that they keep as guards, giant ants, gargoyles, green slimes, hydrae, plural of hydra, lions, giant rats, trolls, tree people, and so I'm assuming cave bears, wyverns. Says they rarely keep undead. Besides guardians, dragons have pets as well. Often include plants that can juggle, talking monkeys, singing birds, pseudo dragons, fish with gem encrusted bodies, floating lights, and the occasional human, dwarf, elf forced to serve as a jester. And then it goes on to other stuff. And then it gives a whole section on the macro terms, which are the termites that dig the mounds. And so we get termite workers, and then we have soldier termites, and then several sub versions of soldier termites. We have the type A, type B, type C, type D, and type E soldier termites. I'm not sure how that all equates, but I think based on the names that are accompanied with these may be Dragon Clan specific. And then they have King termites, Queen termites, and a section on plant lore, dragon plant lore. These are all various plants that tie in with dragons. So again, this book just keeps giving more and more. And then we have a whole history section talking about the history of the dragons as presented in here. And we start to get little glimpses of human structures made around dragons, and then we get a Dragon Lord town. We start getting into the section on the Dragon Lords. We get into Dragon Lord classes, as in social classes: Justice, Power, Songster, Priest, Warrior, Warrior Dragon Lords, Priest Dragon Lords, and then we get our Dragon Lord character class, where we are presented with 12 experience levels of Dragon Lords, and their various abilities. I have not read this in depth, but essentially, like for example, when you become a Lancer, which is 4th level, it just explains the order of what they can do. Like most D&D classes, it's a wall of text that has all of the class abilities buried in there. And then, so it's interesting because they have benefits of Riders of the Dragon. Base chance of your... This is kind of cool how they control the fact that, you have here's a player character class with a dragon. Your dragon may not be available. Base chance for a dragon to be with his rider, chances are with the seasons. So like in winter, 10% chance that the dragon is available. In summer, it's 50%. So while yes, you are a dragon rider in your character class who has access to a dragon, you don't have a lot. At 3rd level, you get a Staff of the Serpent, which is a special magic item for dragon riders. We then get some more lore on them, an illustration of a dragon rider, or a dragon lord, I should say, and the Power Tree Staff. But also talks about other weapons and accoutrement for the dragons and stuff. Cool rules for the wearers. And then this is where, again, this book just so packed. We get the Dragonlands, an entire hex map of a land populated by dragons and dragon lords. And each of these areas is marked on here by dragon type. And there's a list over here that talks about the populations. So, for example, the Green Dragon Kingdom or territory has 1,016 people in it. Wow. So keep in mind, this is a campaign setting to focus around dragons, because it talks about within this land live 9,893 dragons. So when it says population, that's the population of the dragon clan there, not the humans. So there are 1,016 green dragons in that area. Now each of these hexes is 75 miles. So that's a high concentration of dragons. Adventuring in that area would be a nightmare. It talks about Dragon Civil War, man in the Dragonlands, weather, special features of the Dragonlands. Gives a whole bunch of different locations that are very interesting. Great use of stock art type art back in the day too, because like I can't help but feel like that's just a piece of stock art of a mountain. I'm sure it explains Dirty History and Hobbies in the book somewhere here what they eat. Um, but also I'm not so it's a completely alternative version of dragons. So for all we know, they may subsist on something else besides just food. So we got a whole bunch of different cool locations that are all keyed in. They're all letter coded. So are they all on the map? Yep, GG. Yep. So this map is all letter coded for specific areas, which is cool. And then we get into adventures. So there's the adventure is from page 64 all the way to the end of the book on page 96 is the adventure. So in addition to all the supplemental material, you were getting what 30 some odd pages of adventure, which was about kind of average for AD&D modules back in the day. It does give you some pre-generated characters if you wanted to use those in here. And then gives a little prop, even kind of a little wanted men-at-arms. Adventure 1, The Search. And then we go through that, and we also have some more hex maps. So it's kind of this adventure appears to be done in the in sort of a grid search kind of a pattern. So that's an interesting way of doing it. Different events and GM forces to levy against the players while they're doing the searches. Activating units. We even have a section of counters over here. And so I'm assuming, based on this being an 86, we would have had the option for photocopies. And so you can count. They're actually double-sided, oddly enough. So, you have an image on one side, and then on the back side of these counters, there are numbers of some sort. Interesting way of doing it. I'm kind of curious why they did it that way. In Ice Elves, the adventure is not for Dragon PCs, Slan. It does appear to be for regular PCs. In Ice Elves, they have a card insert in the middle of the book that actually is designed to be pulled out and used as a game aid because it provides deck plans for fighting between two ice riggers that have been boarded, and then the flip side of that is a bunch of them. So I'm curious why they didn't do a card pull out on this. Could have been decided that, I guess maybe they decided that just wasn't the right way to do it. But it looks like we go through a spider wood, we go through a swamp tooth area, dealing with all sorts of different regions in this particular one. Looks like we have a river crossing based on this map. So lots of little maps. Also, again, one thing I really do like about Role Aids products is that they have a lot of really nice reusable maps. They do give you stats for all the monsters that appear in the adventure towards the end, so that's kind of cool that they're all collected in one place. Adventure 2, Fort Pelham. This looks like a dragon attack on location, and then we actually get a map of the fort, which is cool. Which is all keyed with its locations. Adventure 3, oddly enough, just listed as Adventure 3, does not have a name for the adventure, just Adventure 3. It's the climax to Adventure 1 and 2. The whole adventure sequence, however, can be reversed. That's interesting. That's a cool thing. It talks about actually reversing the series of adventures, so starting with the last adventure and working your way back, oddly enough. This is cool because what we get here is another cool overview map, and then from there we get interior spaces. We get maps showing interior dragon spaces and stuff. It's really cool. There's Cave, Bear Cave, Dragon Clerics. One encounter with 3 royalist blue dragons. Yikes. 3 blue dragon clerics in one encounter. Let's see. Ancient skill level 10 Brassine dragon. Yikes. Sacred Mountaintop overview, and then we have young adult dragons that are up there. Dragon lairs. So this last adventure has you running into a whole bunch of dragons. I'd have to read it all to find out if they expect you to fight those dragons or to roleplay your way through here. I'm assuming you're supposed to roleplay your way through here because that many dragons is likely going to be death. We get several more maps for various areas. The next few pages are kind of an odd one. We have a caverns map that is done in a clever and interesting way. It winds its way through the next few pages with the notations for the map wrapped around the map. What's funny is that this is the sort of design that is very much lauded in modern design. I mentioned this previously in another when I think I was talking about the Elves book or the Ice Elves book. They're doing things that seem to come back in modern OSR books as modern game design, where you're like, for example, inset maps that are showing smaller areas of a larger map, or in this case, having your map and the encounters done in such a way that they wrap around one another on a page. It does make me wonder, like how much of that modern stuff that we're seeing comes out of people looking at older books and realizing that the non-TSR guys were trying some interesting techniques and tricks. But yeah, so that is the end of Dragons. A lot packed in this book, and I really cannot wait to get my hands on Giants and the Undead book, because I believe the Giants book, I know the Giants book is a later book like this with a tie-in to Grenadier. I'm not so sure about the Undead one, but yeah, these are Mayfair and their Role Aids products are just stellar examples of what third-party stuff was doing back in the 80s for AD&D. And I know I kind of harp on it, but if not for books like this and others, maybe some other stuff that I got a hold of, like Judges Guild and all of that, I'm sure my D&D would be very different. My experience with D&D would be very different than it ended up being, because I had other influences, and we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have YouTube, so you got what you got, and you experienced D&D in an organic way, based on the players and the other DMs and stuff you had access to, and the products that you could get a hold of. I know very few people who ever managed to get a hold of everything that came out, even for the core product range. Yeah, it didn't say that they were the only exception they made in there, they did mention that the evil dragons might occasionally do it, especially red dragons. But it was generally not something they like to do. But if you look at the context of the rest of the supplement, dragons in there are seem to be very high level, very spiritual creatures, and so probably look at undead in a very much abhorrent way, a sort of an anti-life kind of way, which makes perfect sense if you are a spiritual creature who values life and such, then very likely you were not going to look fondly upon undead. Um, I raised a poor orc child. Who are you? I don't recognize that name. But so yeah, that's dragons. I have other ones that I just kind of glanced over. I think next time I might actually pull out the Dark Folk supplement, which was their supplement on the humanoids, and see what it's hey Cal, and see what it has to offer. Uh, I feel like dragons is probably. I mean, dragons clearly is coming towards the end of their tenure making stuff for AD&D, and so it definitely shows. There is certainly a lot of really interesting thought. The other thing too is dragons is one author. This is by Corey Glaberson. It's a name we saw in some of the other supplements, but he is the writer for all of this. Um, let's see. Yeah, editor Jeff R. Leeson, author Corey Glaberson. Um, interior illustrators Jeff Bush, Robin Wood. Cover illustration was by Don Wilson, copyright 1984, so 2 years before the book came out. Maps were by Gerald J. O'Malley and Jonathan M. Koch. And, not surprising, Mayfair Games, also in the Midwest, Illinois. It does talk about no part of this book may be reproduced in any form or any means except for the inclusion of brief quotations or review. Permission is granted to purchaser of this book to copy the maps and histories for personal use, provided that none of the copies are sold or traded. So I was about to say, like, what about the counters? But yeah, it's it's a good solid book. Hey Wood, how's it going? It's one of the I think it's one of the must have for the Mayfair stuff. It is just too packed full of information. And whether or not you used it whole cloth or you just borrowed some stuff for your D&D campaign, I think there's a lot there. Like the mutations alone are really good ways to spice up your dragons. Like let me pull out the mutations again and take a look at that. So for example, let's see if I can find the mutations table again. There are quite a few mutations. So there's, let's see, we have astral projection, aura, change breath weapon. So the dragon can mutate to breathe other attacks besides fire. Double wings, duo stomachs, extra eyes, gem eyes. So a lot of these are cosmetic, but could tie into various campaign things. Prehistoric tail, or prehensile tail, excuse me. No wings, twins, two heads, two tails, ultra vision. Yeah, so there's quite a few different mutations in here. But Yeah, it's. I definitely want to get a hold of get a hold of Giants next if I can, and the Undead book. I don't know what the Undead's going to include in it. Probably if anything, it'll likely, if it follows suit with the way that the other books have done, it will more than likely offer. I have a feeling Undead will be a lot like Dark Folk in that it will probably cover sort of the best hits list of its topic. Dark Folk covered, most of the common humanoids, as well as trolls, which I guess are common humanoids, technically, sort of, kind of. So Undead more than likely will probably give us a look at skeletons and zombies, probably some variations on those. It will likely have a section on liches. I can't imagine Role Aids with their quality not doing an entire section of that book on liches. It'll probably have an adventure in it. But yeah, it. I also do want to start trying to pick up uh, more of their adventures, um, just to see what their adventures are like. The only one I have is the sort of Fu Manchu sort of Orientalism adventure they did, which looks really good. It's got like lots of useful maps and an interesting storyline to it. Um, some of their adventures are interesting because they take place in pseudo historical settings, um, which is kind of interesting. So, like, there's one I think that takes place in actual medieval France. Um, there may be, yeah, the Lich Lord's title. I don't know if the Lich Lord's title may even be a tie-in to a book series. Um, there's so much. The Role Aids series is actually pretty damn huge. Of course, I'd love to get a hold of the rest of the Fantastic Treasures series. I only have the first one. Also, Monsters of Myth is a good one where they take their take on various monsters from various folklores and mythologies. So that's good. Um, but yeah, I want to take a look at some of the adventures. Again, I don't really run adventures, but I do like to look through them, borrow them, um, and kind of pick and choose. But also, as I get on in life, I'm a little bit more enamored by the idea of using some book adventures. That's probably Mage's Musing's fault for demonstrating what you can do in his OSE campaign with just kind of tacking together adventures. But I mean, in my early days, I started out with printed adventures. Back when I was more of a player, though. But most of my DMing has been homebrew. But yeah, so that was Dragons. Today I think it's going to be kind of a short stream. That's mainly what I wanted to do. Um, um, if folks have specific questions, as usual, I can go ahead and try and answer them or anything that you guys are thinking these days. Um, but yeah, it's I just need to be able to have the monies to buy all of the books, and I'm starting to get through all the cheap ones because there are some of these Role Aid supplements that are insanely priced. Um, I won't even get into the Demons supplement that came out during their 2E days. That was in. If you like to run demon heavy campaigns, that is a must have. It started out as a box set. I think it's like two box sets plus a bunch of um, Monstrous Compendium style folios of nothing but demonic personalities, minions, and they're much more creative, demonic, horrific, grotesque. I think they came out in the 90s when, we were, when White Wolf's tendrils got out there and everything, it started getting dark and edgy and extreme because it was the 90s, so everything was extreme. Um, uh, yeah, I think mostly that's what I've done with published adventures is just look at them and see how they're structured, um, and then kind of learn from there. But yeah, so that is sort of what I came here to talk about. Um, and I think with that, I'm probably going to go ahead and close it out for today and call it a short one. I do have to grab a nap here because I'm old. And I got stuff to do this afternoon before my game, so I won't be able to go ahead and grab that snooze before game. There's a local art museum thing going on that my wife and I are going to go to, and that should be fun. Oh, and good and wonderful positive news. While after going to breakfast at the diner, the local diner this morning, my wife and I decided to wander over um, to uh, the local donut shop. There is a mom and pop donut shop in town, and it's insane. The average donut there is big enough to where if you split it in two, each person still has a full donut. But it was kind of a quaint little place. They have it was nice to see it that they actually have espresso. So coming from Seattle, it's nice to find a local espresso shop that's not Starbucks. And there was a dude in there playing a mandolin. He had an album he was selling, taking tips. A little kind of country mountain-esque, mountain style mandolin playing. Very cool. It was kind of a fun experience, and that's local. So awesome. But looped rules. But yeah, it's funny. I'm playing Celesta, which is a fifth edition computer uh, computer RPG, very much in the style of Baldur's Gate. And as I'm recovering the artifacts of one of the ancient wizards of the Tower of the Arcanum in there, I find an amulet and a soul gem, and I'm like, am I getting set up to be liched? So, but um, I think Grumpy. I think actually what I'm seeing here is so this place has been here for a while, from what I understand. But I think a couple of things are combining to make the things that for the first couple of years here we couldn't find. A couple of things: the area is growing. People are moving into the area from outside the area because it's cheap to live here and stuff like that. So they're bringing with it new businesses and stuff, but also the cheap um, real estate is it does allow people to start small businesses and stuff. Also, familiarity in with the area is factoring into that too. My wife and I did not actually get out nearly as much as we needed to, like for the first year and a half in the area and stuff. So, but now we're getting a little bit more comfortable. We're looking around. Like we've discovered so much that was right in our backyard that we've been looking for. Like not only is there this cool donut place with espresso and a nice little diner, there's a pho place. And so back in Washington, every strip mall has a pho place in it. It's ubiquitous, and they like just do pho. And you walk in there, and we had one in our neighborhood that the people knew us on site. We'd go in there with our kids, and they knew exactly what we were ordering. You know, one kid wanted a meatball, one kid wanted a beef. You know, my wife and I wanted a large chicken. You know, and so finding that uh, is really helpful. It's really nice. But yeah. Uh, yeah. Interestingly enough, I found out recently that there are local coffee roasters here in St. Louis too. One of the nice things about St. Louis, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff about St. Louis, but also one of the nice things about St. Louis is pretty diverse, and so it has a lot of stuff going on. And Wibs, so there's a place in Oregon called Fuck You, um, and so yes, they definitely know what they're doing. Um, um, but yeah, so I did notice I did see that we have some local roasters. Also, with St. Louis traditionally being kind of the heart of large mainstream brewing in the United States, with Anheuser-Busch and all of that and stuff, it also has quite a bit of a craft brew community and stuff as well, so that's good. But the city is much more diverse than I would have ever thought. It has I mean, we have lots of Indian and Pakistani restaurants. There are some North African restaurants around. We're getting more Japanese places. We've got the local Chinese is different than West Coast Chinese food, so that's taking some getting used to. But yeah, that's old news for me though. But the nice thing is we're finding it. So we picked up half a dozen donuts, which actually equals about a dozen donuts at most places you get. I mean, the bacon maple bar is like that long, and I'm not even joking. It's literally that long, and that's like two bacon maple bars. Um, but anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and call it early today. Thank you to everybody who came by. If you were not already part of the Discord and active on it, by all means, come on over and take a look. We have RPG and miniatures categories, as well as just general categories for art, sharing art and memes and stuff like that, and just general discussion there. So, thank you all again. Have a good one. Get out and game and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.